ones often. Right. What I personally love about watercolour is the way it likes to have its head, it likes to have some freedom, and the way it wants to move in the water. I'm sure that the water in watercolour is the biggest clue. So what I want to do first of all, just to show you what happens, is I'm going to lay just a little bit of colour water up the top. Don't want it too much, don't want it swimming. Lay a bit of water up the top, and I'm going to leave a gap in the middle, and I'm going to lay a bit more water. So that's just pure water. There's a gap in the middle and then some more, and I'm going to lay just a strip of colour, and I want you just to see, I'll try and do it so my hand's not in the way, what happens. So this is wet, dry, wet, nice wobbly hand. You can see how it softens. Let's just put a little bit more into this bit so you can see easier. Press down a little bit firmer on the brush, and then I'll get a wider line. So you can see how up the top here, maybe I'll just pick this up so you can see a little bit easier still. If I bring it a little bit closer. So you can see how the edges have softened and bled a little bit. It keeps its shape, what we call hard, that's soft edges. This here is hard edges. Very precise, very clean. It's not running away or going anywhere except where I lay it. Soft again through here, soft, diffused, and then it goes harder again here. If you get a little bead of colour like that down at the bottom, just take the moisture, where's my kitchen towel gone? Take the moisture out of your brush so that you've got a drier brush. It's what we call a thirsty brush, and then just touch it into the bottom and it will suck up that little bead. If you leave it there, you do risk that the bead will just run and travel down your paper where you don't want it, but more likely the little bead is here, it stays very wet, the rest of the paint dries, and if you've got very wet paint and you've got some that's damp and drying, it pushes into it and leaves you with what they call cauliflowers, hard edges. Right. So, soft and hard edges, which is one of the most useful techniques you can have in your picture making skills. Soft edges tend not to draw attention to themselves, hard edges do, so you can do pictures with things close to you with hard edges, and you can soften them off into the background if you want to draw less attention to them. I'm just going to make a little, let's do, for the sake of argument, let's just do a little petal shape. Slight petal shape. The whole thing doesn't have to have a soft or a hard edge. At the moment it's wet paint on dry paper, but I want to soften an edge, but I don't want the whole thing soft, so I can bring clean water on my brush a little bit further away, and I can touch up into it, just touch into it, and you'll see it gives, and then pull away again, and it gives somewhere for the paint to go. So you can see it's softened off into this damp area here. And all I had to do was bring clean water, touch up into it. It does the rest by itself. And then if you just fade that away, then when it dries you won't even notice it. So you can create your soft edges where you want them. If the whole spaces, if the whole area is damp, and I lay colour into it. Then the whole thing will be soft. But while it is damp and wet and got a sheen on it, I can introduce other colours. So let's pop blue in, ultramarine blue. Just quickly make up a little bit quick before it dries off. Not too weak. If I add, what comes of hurrying. So if I drop some colour into it, it's running down the page because I've got the board at an angle, but you can see soft edges. Wet paint into wet paint. The paint I add must not be a weaker constitution than the paint already down there. It can be stronger, but you don't want it weaker. And again, I'm just going to suck up the bottom there. So adding colour into one colour while it is wet, and you get nice soft fusions. If I've got colour and it's dry, which I think that is, and then I lay wet paint across it. You do need to work carefully over dried paint because the water can soften and make the dried paint soluble again, so it will move. Let's just drag. So that is dried paint, and that is dried paint on dry paper, and this is wet paint dragged across. So you can see it's wet paint on dry paper, so we've kept that nice crisp edge. Does show, even though that's quite a dark colour, I don't know if you can see on the video, but you can see through and see the stripe of the purple underneath. That's, even though it's a dark colour, it's very translucent, and that is what really attracts people to watercolour, is the translucency. Different paints, some are denser and heavier than others. Anything else that I wanted to show you quickly? Nice soft edges, dropping colours in. Some colours are more aggressive than others. Let's just put another little. Let's put another little band up here of colour. So that's the purple again. Some colours, yellow ochre, again, it's what they call a slightly more opaque colour. I mean, you can water it right down and it will become translucent, but it's a little bit denser, a little bit more opaque, and it not such a good mixer. If I add some of that in, it tends not to want to spread, it tends to want to stay where it's put a little bit more. Because it's wet, it will soften, but it doesn't want to sort of mix as readily as, say, the ultramarine blue that I dropped in here. It keeps itself together and tends just to sort of push the other colour out the way and keep to itself. The best thing is just to play and use your colours, do little practice things like this, see how colours mix. What I might just show you is very quickly, greens are a funny subject, quite tricky. I have got a green in here, but that is the original pan. I never really use greens, sort of ready-made. I tend to make them up myself from a combination of blue and yellow. I will just quickly, if I make one out, I'm going to use ultramarine blue, and let's put some cadmium yellow in it. Right, mix it in my palette. So I've made myself a green, a little bit of a sludgy green. And I'm going to lay that here and give myself a patch of green. So you can make the colour up in the palette, or if I give myself some ultramarine blue there, running out of space here, let's make a little bit of cadmium yellow up here. Right, I'm going to add yellow first, a little bit stronger than that. Let me add a little yellow, and then I'm going to add blue here. Right, so doing it, you can do it actually on the paper. Obviously it's hanging down. This still registers as a green. Some areas have mixed themselves on the paper into a green, or through the action of the brush into a green. Some areas are still retaining their own yellow. Some areas are still retaining their own blue. If you've got a big expanse, say grass, towards the front of your painting, if I went in with the green, ready mixed in the palette, I could have a swathe of green across there, potentially a little bit boring. Or I could use this where I'm mixing it on the paper itself, and visually, to your eye, this is much more exciting. We read it as green. From a distance we'll read it as green. We come up close and the eye can be fascinated by the soft blends. Oh, individual yellow, soft blends. Oh, individual blue. Visually, that is much more exciting than a pure green. Different blues combined with different yellows will make different types of greens. So I think I'm going to stop there, except to say watercolour, it is a fascinating adventure, and there are lots and lots of things that you can do with it, and perhaps I'll come back another day and do a little bit more.